we're here with Steven. Steven, welcome.
Thank you.
So we just graduated, what, a little over a week ago, 2 weeks ago now, bro?
Yeah.
It's been crazy, but how you been?
I've been good. Just taking an easy summer so far. Hasn't really hit me that we've graduated, but
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. So I want to start off with sports. Just how did you get involved in sports?
yeah. So I think the end of eighth grade, is when I was first recruited to the Red Hawks, which I had been playing football in middle school before then for the Kearsarge Wildcats, but so yeah, freshman year, I decided to join the Red Hawks. That was probably the best Red Hawks team I've ever been on. That was the year we had Colby Quiet, Mike Oberheim, we had Danny Rinden, Jack Horn, just all great athletes. And we had a good record that year. I believe we fell short somewhere in the semis or the quarterfinals and playoffs. But halfway through the season that year, I got a concussion in JV football, which was pretty bad. I missed like a month or so of school. But I got to come back later in the season and cheer the guys on in playoffs, so it was a good year.
I remember that. How did your injury impact you?
It was hard. I made school hard. I had to ease back into it, and when I came back to football the next year, I was a little timid at first because I didn't want to have to go through that again.
Yeah. So overall with football, did you ever question after you got that concussion that maybe I don't want to play football anymore or anything like that?
Yeah, so later down the line, I had more of a debate with myself of if I should continue or not, and I ended up not continuing after junior year, and that was one of the main reasons was injuries. But yeah, I made it through my sophomore season without any injuries, so that was good.
So sophomore year, obviously you had your concussion your freshman year, and you got to witness all these guys, all these great examples, super talented athletes, as you mentioned before. And then we have the pandemic come in towards the end of probably about 2/3 of the way through our freshman year. So then that next fall, there was a debate with the school board if we're even going to have sports in the fall or not, and ended up having it. And then lose some guys on that roster, have COVID going on, coming back from that injury. What was going through your head?
I mean, it was a crazy time, so I didn't really know what to expect. I just kind of had to be flexible, just like everyone else.
Yeah. So going into that season, did you have anybody who you lost from the previous season who was just, talent-wise was big on the team? I know Colby was one of those guys, but also in a leadership way, did you feel like you were starting to take on that role, or you still had to learn from a guy or two?
So going into sophomore year, it was like losing Colby was huge. He was an amazing running back. He was arguably he kind of had our team on his back in a way, but our line that year was mainly juniors. So going into sophomore year, we had a returning line that was really good, and then Jack Morrell took a bigger role on the team as the main running back. So that year we did pretty well having that veteran line and Jack Morrell running the ball. But as far as leadership goes, the Red Hawks have always had good leadership, so there was always a lot of good guys to look up to.
Yeah, with Coach Wood, he kind of sets the foundation for the culture there and the leadership, and just kind of everybody has a general idea of what to do. Can you talk about just having him as a coach and his impact on everyone?
Yeah, so when I first met him, I had heard some things about how hard he was and how it can be rough. It's kind of tough love as a football coach, but I did learn a lot from having him as a coach, and I think that he's really good at coaching and sets a good culture, and he has rules and he enforces them well. But I think, like you said, he builds the foundation well, and there's really a strong culture behind the team.
Yeah, so moving on. So let's get into your, do you have anything to add for your sophomore year? I don't want to cut you off, but
No, that's when I started to play a little bit of varsity more. I was still doing JV, but I would lean into mainly defense and special teams on varsity.
Yeah, did you find that playing all those different positions that there was a preference you had?
I really liked kickoff. That was my favorite because I would be the wing all the way on the outside, and it's not a hard job. You just sprint as fast as you can toward the ball and try and get the guy.
All right, so moving on for your junior year of football, just give us an overview of everything.
Yeah, so junior year, we lost a lot of guys. We did not have that veteran line. We had pretty much a new line that year. And we still had Jack Morrell, which was good. He was like the main force of our team. And I obviously had a bigger role that year. I played a lot of defense and a little bit of offense. I wasn't playing that much, and then special teams. But our season that year wasn't as great. I think we finished of 2-6, which isn't great, but we had a lot of close games. I don't think any of those games were games that we couldn't have won. I think we had a chance to win every game, but yeah, a lot of them didn't go our way.
Yeah, so that whole experience of stuff not going your way and losing, that's part of life with that 2-6 season, just like sometimes stuff doesn't go your way. What did you learn from that experience about both football life and just sports in general, I guess?
Yeah, so those losses were really hard, and I think it helped me to learn like what losing feels like, and just like makes me not want to lose. It's like not something you want to go through, and at the end of the day, like losing it's tough, but I think it's also a good experience to like see what mistakes you've made and build from there.
All right, so end of your junior season takeaways, that would be your last year playing football, but what were you thinking at that point? Were you thinking about returning or?
I think so, yeah. But as we'll talk about later, like my lacrosse career at this point was like getting more serious, and I had put more thought into like it took the spot from my football career being number one to my lacrosse career. So at the end of the junior year, I was kind of expecting to return, but I wasn't set on it.
Okay. So let's move on. Let's talk about like all the winter sports there is to offer. You got hockey, you got basketball, skiing. There's all those different sports. What was your thought process? Because you didn't end up doing any of that.
Yeah, so during the winter, I really focused on conditioning and working out for lacrosse because that started to be my main focus for sports. And then I would also be playing indoor lacrosse every weekend, which was super beneficial in my lacrosse career.
All right. So let's move on to the spring of just all the years combined, but we'll start off with your freshman year. Lacrosse, was this your first year playing lacrosse your freshman year, or had you done it prior?
I've been playing lacrosse since third grade, so this would have been like pretty far down the line in terms of my lacrosse career.
So that'd be like your seventh season.
Yeah.
Now. So with lacrosse, you started playing that before you played football, right?
Yeah.
So what was it about lacrosse that really grabbed your interest?
Something about just like how fast paced the game is, how I picked it up pretty quickly, and I think I enjoyed being like decent at it, and like it was just a lot of fun with the guys. It's a really fun sport to just like play with your friends because a lot of it is chemistry and working together.
Do you feel like part of the reason you felt like you were better at lacrosse in the end was because you had more experience with it?
Oh yeah, I think in lacrosse, experience is one of the biggest parts of like being good at the game because there's a major skill gap between people who have played for a long time and people who've kind of picked it up recently, and you really see that during like catching and throwing and just your stick work in general. You can really tell when someone's been playing for a long time.
All right, so let's start with your. You can talk a little bit about middle school if you want to for lacrosse, and then we'll transition into your freshman season.
All right, middle school lacrosse. Don't remember a whole lot, but 7th grade we had a really good team in 7th grade. We had guys like Ryan Brown, Aidan Burns, and in the middle school times, those guys were like really good. They were really ahead of the curve. And then 8th grade, not a whole lot of memories. We had Coach Chapin, which was really fun. That was a really fun team. We had guys like Max and Kevin that didn't continue playing lacrosse after that, but they were really fun to have on the team.
So you have all this hype built up, Coach Blue, has that winning culture. You have 2017 champions, 2018 champions, 2019 champions, three-peat, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is my opportunity. I have a chance to win a championship here. And then it's almost springtime. You're getting ready for it to start, and tryouts are like starting in a week, and then COVID
Yeah.
and no season. What was going through your mind at that point, and that make you appreciate just the opportunity to play the sport that much more?
Yeah, I mean, that was crazy. It was so sad when that happened. I mean, I feel a little selfish saying it was sad for me because I can't imagine, like, not having a senior
Mhm.
year for, like, Colby Quiet, for example. Like, I can't imagine how that felt. But, yeah, it was really sad, and I really wish I could have had the freshman year. But at the same time, the guys who were, like, the class of 2020, them missing out on a senior year of lacrosse, I really feel bad for them. That must have been really hard.
Okay, so let's move on to your sophomore year. Is there anything that took place in terms of your lacrosse development between freshman and sophomore year? If there's nothing major worth noting, that's okay.
Between freshman and sophomore year, I did a lot of off-season work because I realized that missing a whole year of lacrosse was going to be kind of hurtful in my development as a lacrosse player. So I did a lot of like wall ball and then summer league, stuff like that, just to try and get better in the winter too.
All right, so let's move on to your sophomore season. What was going on then? First opportunity to get to play high school lacrosse, the guys there, the team that year.
Yeah, so sophomore year of lacrosse, I came in not really knowing what to expect. It was my first time on the lacrosse team, obviously. And so tryouts went pretty well for me. I didn't expect to make varsity, but I really wanted to. That was one of my biggest goals. And I believe the three sophomores who made varsity, it was Lincoln Wilson, Will Chapin, and I. And that was pretty exciting. It felt like a really big achievement, especially to be a sophomore and miss freshman year of lacrosse. It felt really good to make varsity. And so I believe that year we had for defense, the starting defense before me would have been Stephen Newton Delgado, Vincent Waddell, John Sullivan, I believe, and potentially Eric Ball or someone else. I can't really remember. But so what happened was before our first game, it was against Kearsarge, I remember it. One of them got hurt. I believe it was either Eric or Vincent. And so all of a sudden, I was the next in line, and I had my first, the first game that I had ever experienced the team play. I was starting in it, which I thought was really scary, and I was super nervous. But Aidan Burns actually sent me a really nice message. I think it was the night before the game, and it was really encouraging, and it made me feel a lot better. And he was a junior captain that year, so he was really good at that. And then eventually, I earned my starting spot that year, the sophomore year, and we had a good season until Eli got hurt. I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got hurt playing basketball at school, and so we had Danny Lee in goal, and it was his first year in goal, and he did well for a first year, but there's only so much you can do in your first year in goal. So I believe we lost in the quarterfinals to Trinity, which was a really good team. They ended up winning the championship, but I think we could have won that game even with Danny, but we didn't play our best, which it was sad going into the next year. It made me a little bit more motivated.
How'd you feel entering your junior season after losing that year, and then you got 2 years left, and you've lost some guys, but you still overall have a strong team?
Going into junior year, it was definitely that was the year that broke the streak the sophomore year. So it was going into the junior year, it was geez, this team doesn't just the championship's not given to you. You have to work for it, and it's a hard path to get there. So going into the junior year, we just had to try that much harder and hope to have a better season, and we did. So junior year, I think we came in with a lot of the same guys. We did have some big losses, Steven Newton Delgado was probably one of the biggest, and a lot of our offense was new that year, but the class of 2022 had a lot of good middies and attackmen, which were really a good part of our team. So that year we did a lot better. And my sophomore year, sorry to backtrack here, but
That's all right.
Steven Newton Delgado was like the best deep hole in the state, and like I was a little overshadowed, which kind of helped me my junior year because no one knew who I was. When we went against these other teams, they wouldn't know who I was. They'd just be like, "Oh, they don't have Steven Newton Delgado anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how good can they be?" So this year I was tasked a lot with covering like the best guy, the best attackman on the other teams, and the other teams wouldn't know who I was, but I eventually like made a name for myself covering the best guys. And this year there were a lot of good offensive players in lacrosse. There was guys like Brendan Boshi, Jack Norrie, just like absolute powerhouses that it was so hard to stop them. They were both on Campbell, which this year Campbell had an undefeated team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so our season was going well. I think we only lost 2 games in the regular season. Entering playoffs, we were somewhere in the top 4, I believe. And then so we won in the semifinals, and then going to the championship, we were expecting to play Campbell, but they had actually lost to it was the 4 seed Laconia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like super unexpected. Like we were already like kind of prepared to play Campbell in the championship, but they lost. It was their first loss of the season. So going into the championship last year, it was like, geez, no one expected us to be playing Laconia right now. And they weren't honestly the most skilled team in the league, but they ended up winning the championship. So obviously they got there and did what they had to. And we lost by, I think it was 2 goals, which was really crushing, especially knowing we were the better team too.
All right, so you have that. Yup. You lose all these guys from that year. 1 year left. One last shot to win the championship.
Yeah. So yeah, going into senior year, we had just lost like almost our entire starting lineup. I mean, I think it was me, Lincoln, Patty for starters returning, and that's just crazy. Like the team is brand new pretty much, and so going into this year, it's like, who are we? Like, what are we gonna do? What can we do? And it started off slow. I mean, we had an entirely new offense, a bunch of new middies, and we had a lot of new players this year, which definitely helped. But yeah, so we started off pretty slow on offense. Our defense was good, solid from the start, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd have low scoring games. I think all season long, our total goals against, our average was like 5.5, which is pretty good for lacrosse.
Yeah.
So our offense started off a little slow, but they worked a lot at practice. Coach Dev was taking them aside all the time, working with them, and just teaching them all these new things. We actually had to switch up the way our offense plays. And normally we have like a really fast-paced, like run and gun style offense, but this year we didn't really have the firepower on offense. It was more of like a slower, more skilled offense rather than a more athletic and fast offense. So yeah, we developed our new offense, which we called kind of like a tic-tac-toe type of method, where it was a lot of like fast-moving ball instead of fast-moving players. And so moving the ball around fast and just looking for opportunities to score ended up being like our recipe for success.
Mm-hmm.
So midway through the season, we were at like a record of 5-5, and I was starting to think like, this is kind of sad. Like, this is my senior year, and we're not looking too great for the playoffs. We're not looking like we're gonna make a deep run. Like, I mean, I kind of had expected not our best team this year going in, like losing all those players.
Yeah.
But I mean, we kind of just, as the 4 of us as captains, we like kind of came together and realized like we have to do more, and we have to like put in more, like take bigger roles, like just everything we could do. So we just started like giving our everything. We started embracing our team's culture this year, which was a different culture, I would say. Our team's always been really like kind of silly a little bit, but like focused when we need to. But this year there was none of that focus. It was just always goofy, always silly, which I personally love. And I mean, it ended up working because Coach Devitt, who's more of our serious coach, he just ended up accepting it and being one with like all the goofiness, and
Yeah.
we just started playing this style of lacrosse that was we're having fun, we're like doing lacrosse, but we're also like fooling around all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't in games, we weren't fooling around, we were just like having fun, like talking to each other, just playing for fun. We stopped trying to like just win seriously, and we started just like caring less about the win and caring more about having fun and playing relaxed. And I think that really was when the change in our season happened.
Because you took the pressure off, sort of.
Exactly, yeah. I think honestly, like having that 5-5 record made it seem like, all right, we don't have to like try and win as much. We're already kind of like down a little bit. Like we can like have a little fun. Like the season's already like more than halfway through, and we're like not doing the best. So let's have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started having fun. We started winning and winning and winning, and then eventually we ended off the season on a really high note. Actually, I'll go back a little bit. I meant the regular season. So towards the end of the regular season, we had a game against Pelham, which was like a big challenge. They were ranked really highly at this point. I think they were either the 2 or the 3 seed, and they had only lost once at the very start of the season, and then they had beaten like some of the best teams by a lot. So going into this game, it was at Pelham. We were like, oh my gosh, like this is a must-win game if we want to like really have a good shot at going deep in the playoffs. So we went there. It was a far drive. Pelham's like at least an hour away, and we had a lot of fun. It was a wicked low-scoring game. Like our defense was playing phenomenally. Like I think me, Avo, and Cam each had like at least 8 caused turnovers and like a lot of ground balls. It was a lot of the ball would come down to our side and then we'd get it right back, which kind of kept us in the game. And so we actually entered overtime at a score of like 3-3, I believe. And then we were playing in overtime for a while, and then all of a sudden Lincoln Wilson scored like an overtime goal, which was crazy. And I think that's when our season really like switched from like kind of a mid-level season, and then we just like took off right there. I think that really ignited like the fire on our team, and everyone saw like we're a good team that can do like really good things. And so after that game, we had other great wins, and we just kept streaking. And then our last regular season game was against Plymouth, and I believe at the time they were 2 seeds above us, something like that. They were in the top 3 or 4, and we played a really good game against them too, while missing some of our key players. We were missing John Despres, Braden Crawford, and I think Merrick for most of it. And so we played a great game, and I believe we ended up winning by 1 or 2 goals. It was 1 goal, I think. And that was like, all right, like this is who we are now. Like we're a good team. No one can stop us. Like it felt great, like turning our season around. So then we entered playoffs, and we had Plymouth that next week. So it was like a back-to-back game with them.
So you guys were top 6 out of the 10 teams in the playoffs. So you avoid the preliminary round, and then you got the 5 seed, and they were the 4. So right after the regular season, you went up there and played them again. I remember that game. Take us through that. It's raining. The same matchup you had before. It was a close game last time. Now they know you. They've seen you recently. What are you thinking?
I think we had a giant advantage going into that game, in that we were missing players the last time we had played them, so they didn't know about John, they didn't know about Merrick, and they didn't know about Braden. Actually, I don't think Merrick played in that game, but regardless, they didn't know about some of our guys. And so going into that game, we were like, let's get the ball to these guys, let's like use them to our advantage type of thing. And so it really helped going into that game, and we were all kind of confident. I was a little worried, to be honest, because it was the first playoff game of my senior year. Like this was the first game that if we lost, I was done, and it would have been my last game with the team. But we came out hot that game, and we had a much better performance than the last time we played them. I don't remember the score, but it was a lot better.
It was like, what was it, 13-4, something like that?
That sounds.
It was a pretty dominant victory. I think Merrick was able to play in that game. I thought he got hurt
That
towards
sounds
the end.
right. Yeah.
So yeah, I remember that. And then there's something else I wanted to ask you about. As you're starting the playoffs, you had two special guests join your team, two assistant coaches who were former players the year before and lost the state championship with you
Yeah.
guys, two really good players, Aidan Burns and Eli Stanifer. What did it mean for you when you first saw those guys show up at practice and rejoin the team?
I mean, that was like so great to see them come back and help us out because I was close with both of those guys and you're right, they're like great players. And I think honestly they were like a big part in changing our season around. And like Eli's help at practice for me, especially because I played defense, it was really beneficial. And I think it also reminded us a little of last year, like these guys who aren't like playing on our team anymore because they're off in college and stuff, but they can't play on our team anymore. And last year they lost the championship, and that's how they had to go out, which really kind of reminded us of like this is our last time, and like we have to leave on like a good note type of thing.
So after you win that Pelham game, it's we have to go beat Bow in the Final Four. And Bo's 16-0 at this point. A lot of people saying they don't even belong in D3. They belong in D2.
Yeah.
Tough to beat. Can't do it. Can't beat Bo.
Yeah.
I mean, what was the mentality going in there? Because it seemed like this impossible task at the time. That's what everybody was saying. Not saying your team was saying that. I'm just saying, like, in general, that was the general consensus around the state.
No, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Everyone was kind of, and even on my team, people were like, yeah, this is gonna be like this is like the championship game pretty much. Like that's what it felt like to us. And everyone was kind of feeling like this is like gonna be a really hard game and we're gonna have to give our all. And there was a lot of doubt on the team. Like I'll be honest, I heard people saying like, yeah, there's no way we win this. Like this is our last game. But I think the general consensus of the team was that we had to win. And we could do it too because we had played this team two other times. And the first time we played them, we got defeated pretty handedly. And the second time, it was a little bit closer.
It was 8-4 the second time,
Yeah.
I think.
The second time, it was like, all right, we're kind of starting to see what we need to do. In that game, the score says, yeah, they scored double our points, but honestly, a lot of that game, their goals were kind of flukes and toss-ups and just like in transition. So it was honestly a little bit of a closer game than that. So going into this game, we had already played them twice, and we kind of knew who they were, how they were, and what we needed to do. And I think I've even heard from my friends that the Bow kids were saying they didn't prepare for us enough. They kind of overlooked us and just saw the path to the championship and didn't see us in the way of it at all. And I think that actually helped us a lot because they didn't expect us to put up that much of a fight.
Take us through regulation in that game, just in general. Don't, spend like a ton of time on it, but just briefly take us through.
Alright, so yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was honestly kind of a blur for me a little bit just because it was such a crazy moment. I mean, under the lights, it's like at nighttime, but I just remember our game plan coming in was I was going to guard number 18, Gavin McCabe, who is like their all the offense ran through him. And so one of the first plays of the game, he gets the ball, and he didn't see me coming to get him. And so all of a sudden he starts running to the net, and I shoved him out, and then he started turning, and I hit his stick, and I took the ball from him, which I think instantly he didn't dodge me for the rest of the game, so I think it kind of shut him down and made him think, like, I'm not going to dodge anymore, I'm not going to do anything against this guy. And so the rest of the game, like, their offense was not running through him. It was through other guys, and Cam and Avo played phenomenally, sorry. And our offense that game, too, it was crazy. The game was kind of back and forth. It was like we would score, they would score. And, yeah, so it just kept going back and forth. And then eventually we got into overtime. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is like my season on the line. But it also felt really good. Like, this team came in here not expecting us to put up a fight, and here we are in overtime with them. And I actually remember I was standing next to a couple of their attackmen, and I was like, oh, have you guys been in overtime before? Kind of forgetting that they're like this undefeated team, like, that hasn't even been close to losing like this before. And he was like, "No, this is our first time. I'm really nervous." I was like, "Oh my gosh," because we'd had like 2 or 3 other overtime games, which
So you were more well prepared because you had
Yeah.
faced adversity and they hadn't, so they didn't really know how to deal with it.
I think so, yeah. And then they had a penalty, so we also had man up going into overtime, I believe, and so we didn't even see the ball on the defensive side of the field in the whole overtime. It was up at the offensive side, and it was really scary watching it because I was standing up at the midline with like Avo and Cam and a couple of the offensive guys, and just watching like the guys were passing the ball around. It was slow. They almost dropped it a couple times and got it taken away, but eventually they spun it around to Nick, and I think Nick kind of had like that drive and that like thought in his head like just to go for it.
Yeah.
And so he did, and then he scored his 6th goal of the game, and wow, that was a moment. I can remember like throwing my stick up and just like taking everything off and like running to the pig pile with Nick. It was such a great moment to take on like the #1 undefeated team.
Yeah, insane. Would you say that's like one of the top highlights of your career?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So going to the championship, you get Campbell at Exeter, one last step, and it's holy crap, you've made it back to the championship.
Yeah.
This is it.
Yeah, I mean, going into this game, I was still like couldn't believe that we were going to the championship again.
Yeah.
Like I didn't think we would be there going into this season and throughout the season, but it was like we're here again, and there's no way that we're losing this time. And so we had just beaten the best team, so we were definitely on like a pretty high seat with a lot of confidence, but I think we also realized that this team that we were playing is the #2 seed, so it's not going to be an easy fight. It's not going to be like something we can just dismiss, even though we had just beaten the best team. So
Yeah, so that game's back and forth, and we're ahead by 2-0, and then they come back, they tie it, and I think they had a lead at one point by a goal, and then we come back and we get over, and then it's even in the fourth, like halfway through, and then 1, 2, 3 goals, all of a sudden we're up. What's going through your head at that point?
When those 3 goals were back to back to back like scored, I was like, oh my gosh, like I think we just did it, and I had to stay calm and like keep playing, but that just felt so good, and it took like a giant weight off my shoulders as a defender, because with that like 3-goal like almost pillow you have behind you, it's like you're not super stressed out about your guy scoring. And it was just like the time dwindled down, and then the buzzer was there, and that was it, and we did it.
Your last game playing high school sports,
Yeah.
and you finally get the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Congrats. Nobody deserved it more than you, my friend.
Thank you, Joe.
So, moving forward, that was an incredible experience. I mean, championship parade coming home.
Yeah, that was great.
Championship medal finally, and
Yeah.
everything. It's great. So, moving on now, you get to go to St. Mike's next year and play college lacrosse. Your buddy, Aidan Burns, who we've talked about,
Yeah.
he was originally at Montana and then decided that that was the spot for him. And then you played at Hopkinton, you've played here, came back to help coach this year. What was that relationship like, and how did you end up kind of getting recruited over there?
I mean, it was great to like have him come back and be able to talk like how's the team, and like have him be able to tell me about the guys and like the atmosphere and stuff. And so with the recruiting process, he was a big help actually. And so going into after the junior season, which is when a lot of the lacrosse recruiting happens, like you have a lot of the summer tournaments and showcases and stuff like that. My main school that I wanted to go to was Bentley, because I had talked to that coach, and he wasn't going to give me a scholarship, but he offered me a spot on the team, which that school is really expensive, so it wasn't like I wasn't set on it because
Of the price and everything?
the price was
Understandable.
Yeah, but it was like my #1. Like if I can't find anything else, this is where I was going, and so I was on the Tomahawks in the summer. I keep going to like the tournaments, the showcases, and then there's like I had my sights set on like a D2 school, just because after the Bentley coach offered me a spot, that was kind of like that's where I thought my worth was, so I was trying to like reach schools up there. And so eventually I think my mom was the first one to talk about St. Mike's to me. She was just saying like how great of an area it is because we had vacation there before, and like how it's like a nice little school with a good lacrosse team, which is all stuff that interested me. And then I was like, yeah, I'll check it out. I kind of dismissed it. And then um, I think it was either Coach Devitt or Aidan that started talking to me about it again. They were like, yeah, St. Mike's, like, the coach is interested, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, all right, like, I might as well reach out. And so I went there for a visit, and I talked to the coach. I met a couple of the guys, and I was like, wow, this place is, like, really what I want. And the coach was great. He's a really nice guy. I'm super excited to play for him. And yeah, Aiden helped me out. He gave me like his contact info and stuff like that. And he said that he even put a good word in for me, which was great. And so yeah, I went up there, toured it. I loved it. The coach offered me a spot on the team and stuff, and so I told him I would consider it and like talk it through with my mom and stuff because she was a big part of all my recruiting stuff. And so eventually I decided that like that's where I wanted to go. And so I gave him a call and I verbally committed. And eventually I got like the NLI, the National Letter of Intent, signed it, and that was it.
Awesome. Congrats. So let's talk about moving forward. What are you interested in studying? Do you want to come back and coach at some point, whether it's, temporarily, kind of like Aiden and Eli did this year, or long term? Could you see yourself in a position like Coach Blue, where you're coaching a lacrosse team?
Yeah, so I'm going to study business, particularly, hopefully, either sales or business management. And yeah, I would love to come back and coach next year, kind of similar to what Aiden and Eli did, and Coach Blue said I could do that, which I am super thrilled about. So next year, towards the end of the season, I'm hoping to be there with the guys, helping them out. And looking into the future, I would absolutely love to be in a position like Coach Blue, like coaching the Hopkinton Hawks, because Coach Blue graduated from Hopkinton and played on the team, which I think is super cool. And I would love for that to be me someday, and I think it would be really fun to coach that team.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Joe.